Hello and welcome to the Audience Excellence in Action webinar series and to today's session, The Power of Simplicity, how FMA's audience data strategy saves hundreds of hours each month. I'm Ben Geller from the Omeda marketing team and I'll be your moderator today. In this session, we'll share how Fabricators and Manufacturers Association achieved real, measurable results by simplifying their approach. They took a step back to audit their data, streamline their audience workflows, and eliminated unnecessary steps. The results are impressive. Their team now saves over hundreds of hours every month without adding any new platforms or tools. It's a great example of how smart changes can make a big impact, and we're excited to help share the story. Now, before we get started, let's cover a few housekeeping items. First, we'll have a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but feel free to send in your questions anytime. Just use the Ask a Question box and hit Submit. Second, this session is being recorded and will be available on demand. You'll get an email with a link to the replay as soon as it's ready. Third, when we wrap up, a short survey is going to pop up. We'd appreciate it if you could take a minute to fill it out. It helps make future sessions that we do even more useful. And finally, if anything isn't working, like the slides aren't moving or the audio's cutting out, simply refresh your browser and jump back in. Okay, now I'm finally excited to introduce our guest speaker, April Hanrahan. April is the Director of Audience Development at Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, or FMA, a nonprofit focused on advancing the metal processing, forming, and fabricating industries. April leads audience strategy across FMA's manufacturing sectors with a strong focus on engagement, first-party data, and digital transformation. Her work combines strategic thinking with practical execution to drive meaningful results, which you'll hear more about in just a minute. April, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Ben. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to share how the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association took a step back, reevaluated our approach to data and operations, and found that the biggest wins didn't always come from brand new tools, but from simplifying the way we use what we already had. This is not a story about chasing shiny objects, so sorry if you came here for that. It's really about returning to the basics, gaining clarity, and building the kind of operational rhythm that supports long-term growth. So before we really kind of dig in, I want to just go over who FMA is. So FMA, we are really comprised of 4 different pillars. We have our association side of the business, which is our membership. So we have individual, company, student memberships where we offer essential training programs, networking opportunities, and media resources for people in the metal fabrication industry. We do have 4 media brands, so 4 publications. We have The Fabricator, Canadian Metalworking, Canadian Fabricating and Welding, The Welder, and then we have Spanish Fab. So 2 of our brands are audited and then 2 of them are not. We do have our foundation, which was recently, within the last year, renamed to SparkForce, which offers summer camps and scholarships in manufacturing. And the purpose there is really to inspire, attract, and support individuals in discovering an interest in a manufacturing career. And then lastly, we have our trade show, which is FabTech. It is North America's largest metal forming and fabricating and welding and finishing event. And it happens to take place this year in September in Chicago. Okay, so the challenge, like many organizations, we were facing kind of what felt like a slow creep of inefficiencies. We had a tangled web of data, processes, maybe even systems that I don't really know if anybody really fully trusted 100%, right? So the processing was slow. We were making a lot of manual updates. It felt like some areas of improvement we wanted to make were harder than what they should be. 2 probably of the biggest shifts that I'm going to talk about today, just to kind of give you a little insight, is related to systems and then also some of our processes of how we were handling things. So for us, being an association, we, have been and still are using an AMS system, but how do we kind of pivot away from, not even pivot away from, I should say, but add on to that. And kind of, so it's going to be systems and then also our processes internally that we were doing. So with our AMS system, we had a lot of manual work leading to time-consuming tasks and potential errors. It was an incredible amount of repeated data entry and inconsistent updates that created inefficiencies. Our existing workflows lacked automation, they were siloed, and they caused delays, increasing our workload. Our processes really kind of took longer for the audience team, and we were struggling to meet some demands. And our systems were being pushed to their limits without scalability. So on our media side, we had specific demographic questions that we captured, and then it was a little bit outdated. So to give you a little bit of insight on our demographic questions, we weren't asking like a business class or a business category. We were rather having somebody who subscribed to our products do a write-in field of what their end product was. And then our team on the back end was manually coding what 6-digit NAICS code that would tie to, that end product tied to. So it's a lot of manual work of our team going through subscriber by subscriber, doing that information. So we really knew that we needed an integrated system and processes that offered real-time access to our audience data. And we wanted something that we could be more efficiently to collect our information for our audiences. We needed automation, not just to save time, but to unlock new possibilities. But desires alone weren't going to change the problems that we were having. So we really needed to go into a completely different mind shift to get away from this like tangled mess into more streamline. So what was missing? So consistency. Data was being pulled and analyzed in different ways, resulting in mismatched information, right? So, I could pull something one way, somebody else on the audience team could pull something a different way, and it wasn't necessarily matching 100%. Same thing with the manual coding of a NAICS, right? So if somebody came through and entered a specific thing for their end product, I could say, hey, that might be this NAICS code, but somebody else could say something differently. So there was a lot of inconsistency there. Secondly, I think the lack of confidence. We didn't always trust the numbers or maybe even the systems that we were using, and lack of connection. So the manual processes, sometimes platforms didn't they didn't talk to each other correctly. And sometimes neither did our departments. Being an association, right, we have kind of everybody has different departments, but because of our pillars, we kind of have additional departments within those pillars as well. So we asked ourselves, if we were starting from scratch today, what would we kind of do differently, right? So this isn't a checklist, but there's 8 key changes that I think that we made along the way to help us kind of make this mind shift. So business alignment. Each department or pillar of the organization focused on their own needs with little understanding of how changes might affect the rest of the organization. And how we change that. We evaluated tools and processes, not in isolation, but how they can support our larger goals. Rather than choosing tools for individual departments, we assessed how tools can serve the organization long term. And a lot of those goals were like audience growth, member retention, right? So because we want to maintain that membership, new revenue generation, optimization. But all of this in mind, we knew that we weren't going to find a unicorn, right? So we'll kind of get into that a little bit, but we had to make some shifts that worked across the board. Internal processes. So we had legacy workflows and processes that simply didn't scale. They worked until they didn't. So, now as a team, we challenge, like, does this still serve us? Can we make this better somehow efficiently? Are our current processes scalable, or are they holding us back? So a big thing with this, as we were going from, hey, we're manually coding 6-digit NAICS codes, we then switched to, all right, let's have this as a business class category and somebody select their business class, but those business classes were adjacent to a 6-digit NAICS code. So we just kind of, it's not that we took away how we were capturing or reporting the data. It's just we were capturing it a little bit differently. And we did a lot of different mock-ups of, okay, if we shift from this is how we were doing this process, and now we're going to shift to this way, what does that look like? How is it going to be reported out prior to us actually making the changes? Because we wanted to make sure everybody within the organization felt comfortable with how we were changing those processes. The third thing would be audience evolution, right? So we really haven't had great knowledge, I would say, on our audience behaviors, and anything we did know was because we cross-referenced different data downloads and made our best educated guesses from there. We do have some in-depth surveys, results, and things like that we would cross-reference, but it seemed like a never-ending question of like, is this accurate? Is this right? So this slide here says that we are working on, right? Because this one we haven't changed. We haven't fully changed anything, but this is an ongoing, we're working on implementing a CDP and how we can really kind of capture that data and understand generational preferences or audience behaviors more efficiently. And then of course, we're also dabbling a little bit into how can AI assist us? How can we kind of take what we already have or what we're working on getting, and how can AI assist us in understanding the evolution of our audiences? So that's a big thing that we're working on and continue to work on. So platform integrations, we've all probably heard the saying, we're trying to fit a square peg into a round circle. So we were customizing a software to fit areas of business that it wasn't meant for. So now we take the approach of centralizing when it makes sense and decouple when it's needed, right? So we really had a shift of, hey, we might be using an AMS system because that works for the membership side of our business, but does that make sense for our media side of the business? Or does that make sense for our foundation? So it's kind of funny that, kind of off topic, but this past weekend I went to get my hair cut, and I don't know what we were talking about, but somehow we came up to the realization of, hey, we talked about decoupling and how nowadays there's so many different areas of life and in business where things are decoupled, and that's okay. So for instance, sometimes now people just go to a hair salon to get their hair cut, where they go, they're only getting their hair cut. And then they might go somewhere else to get their hair colored, right? So it's a completely separated thing. Same thing with your car, right? If you need new tires, you're probably just going to a tire shop. If you need an oil change, you could just go to a place that changes oil and they don't do anything else. So I think it's really going into a completely different mind shift of centralizing when it makes sense and decoupling when you need it, and it's okay. And if you need to be connected, just make sure you understand how you're going to be connected and how you make that work, right? So that's really kind of working all together with your teams. So yes, we are still using an AMS system. Yes, we have flipped some things over to Omeda. And yes, we use a different ESP. We have a CDP, right? So it's just kind of understanding the connection, all of those, and understanding how they really can all integrate together. Risk readiness. So we were expecting new tools, processes, and even some reports to replicate our old ways. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge. I'm not going to lie, it was really overcomplicated. Setups were taking a little bit, longer. We were kind of working harder, not smarter. It really kind of felt like something straight out of The Office for anybody who has watched that. We really shifted into, we cannot duplicate the past. We really question ourselves, hey, why are we doing this? If I were to go to you and say, why are we doing things like this? I would say 95% of the time I was I don't know, that's just how it was set up. So we kind of took that mindset away, and we're okay, we can't duplicate the past. We need to reinvent the wheel a little bit of what works for us, right? Again, kind of going back to NAICS coding. So instead of us manually coding a 6-digit NAICS code for some subscriber that was coming through, you know, we were reconfiguring how that process would look within a different system, or how our, processes would work all around. Same thing for the media side of if we had a special split within an issue, how are we going to rework that differently than how we were using it within our current system? Flexibility. So we were forcing tools to do things. They were things they weren't built for. So we were adding workarounds, creating custom reports. So in the end, like, we just future-proofed by evaluating tools and processes through the lens of, can this grow with us, right? So again, kind of going back to the issue closes, or what if we wanted to add new markets down the road? How would that fit into our systems that we were using? Are we flexible enough to, add in new demographic questions? Are we going to have a lot of custom built integrations that we need, custom reports that we're going to have to write? So we knew that we needed to be a little bit more flexible with how we were operating internally. So collaboration and productivity. So teams are operating in silos with limited visibility into each other's workflows. Again, because we are an association, we have the different pillars. So our audience side, the media side, we kind of have demographic questions for our subscribers. Well, the membership side also has demographic questions that they are capturing for the members that come through. So what we really did, we're like, well, how does this affect what we're doing for the subscriber side, affect the membership side? And honestly, I don't think nobody really knew fully. So what we did is we literally pulled out our organization chart, and we met with each department, and we proposed the changes that we were wanting to make. And we talked through like any impacts that would affect that other department's workflows positively or negatively. And I will admit, there was several things that came out of that. Like, well, what about this? This is how we operate. This is how we do things. That kind of touches this a little bit, depending on this and that, right? There was a lot of like little itty bitty things. But this was really important for us to go department by department to kind of walk through those scenarios. And we still to this day are working together, have meetings of like how everything has impacted each different department, to make sure everybody feels comfortable. So I think that's one thing I've never done before, is going through department by department to work through them to make those changes. And the last thing was probably the team empowerment, right? So adapting to rigid platforms or processes instead of system processes supporting our work. We really flipped the script on this one. We chose tools and processes that work for us, that align with how our people work best and for the best purpose. I think this is a big thing of like professionally and personally, like how is the teams within your company going to grow, professionally and personally on the tools and processes that you're using? How are they being challenged every single day? So I think that's a key point here as well. So impact and achievements. How do we save hundreds of hours each month? So this is not an all-inclusive list. So again, a big thing here that I already mentioned is the NAICS coding. Again, that was manually coded by our audience team. And now we just kind of flip the script on how somebody is submitting that demographic information. So previously, using an AMS system for our audience team, we would have to code everything and then do data loaders at the end of the night for processing, which led to very long timing, some aired out records where we weren't notified of like what was airing out. So now that we made that switch with how we coded the NAICS or our business class and flipping to Amida, that saved us a lot of time right there. Audience imports as well, right? So whether that was using a telemarketing, if we had internet imports, anything with event or membership related, we would spend a lot of time coding, segmenting that information to do an upload. And now that just is seamlessly kind of done behind the scenes, right? So for example, for telemarketing files, the telemarketer just works directly with Omeda to send in a JIRA. We're notified, then we can track the results of that ticket and see how many were processed, where, and where they were applied. Audience reports. This was a big one. We really didn't have a clear view into our audience of like the overlap. So we would have to download a ton of Excel files out of our AMS system. We were using Excel AbleBits data to cross-reference data to get an understanding of our audience. Issue close processes took a ton of time again to do ads on, ads offs, etc. Doing the splits. It was a ton of work behind the scenes. We would start working on it, I would say, sometimes 2 weeks in advance of an issue close. And now it's just, we seamlessly, due to the NAICS and because of switching the media side over to Omeda, has saved us a lot of time. And then audience insights, list creation. So the audience team is responsible for doing any type of audience creation, list upload for whatever program is sold to whatever platform. So that might be email, programmatic, social, whatever it is. We were responsible for creating those lists and then uploading them where they needed to be. That took an extreme amount of time with our old processes and how we were capturing data and segmenting on it. And now we have significantly decreased that time as well. Again, not an all exclusive list, but those are the big things. So some key takeaways. Small changes create big impact. You don't have to make all the changes at once. Making incremental adjustments to process rather than overhauling everything can deliver impactful results over time. Stop replicating, start rethinking. I think this is a big one. We can't expect new platforms or processes to mimic old systems or processes. We need to redesign processes with flexibility and scalability in mind. Streamlining internal processes and removing manual tasks can increase speed and accuracy, enabling your team to focus on higher value work. And understanding your data, it is more powerful to understand it than just to collect it. And I think that's a big one that a lot of us are guilty of, is that we all want more data. We want more data. We want to be able to segment more. But if we don't understand the data, we're not as powerful as we think we are, right? So if you're not understanding what you're capturing, why you're capturing it, what can you use it for? Are you actually going to use it? I think those are the big questions to ask yourself and, your team of like, are we actually going to use this? Should we just be putting this data in whatever system we have, to not use it? And I think finally, simplicity is a strategy. So I don't think any of us wake up every day saying, oh, I want to create more work for myself, right? I think we all want to make things as simple as possible. So efficiency really isn't about doing more. It's about less friction, fewer handoffs, and more focus on what matters overall. And what is on deck for us, right? So we're kind of like redefining success. We're embracing steady, sustainable growth, optimizing what we have rather than rushed expansion. So this doesn't mean that we can't add new integrations, but we're not doing something just because it's shiny and new. We're not trying to be the first ones to do something. Cool if we are, but again, we're not chasing after something. Cross-training and team development. So we're really kind of focused on cross-training our entire audience team and make sure everyone feels comfortable with the functionality of our systems. We're really doubling down on metrics and audience insights. So we are going deeper into what the data tells us and how it drives smarter decisions. What do we really have, and does it fit with where we want to be? Do we need all of what we have? And better yet, are we doing something with what we have? Again, kind of goes back to understanding the data versus just collecting it. And staying adaptable. So making sure we look at tools that grow with us and being able to pivot to new ways of looking at things if need be. And those new ways, they don't have to be really big and shiny, right? Like they can simply be just like reevaluating your demographic questions that you're asking or that you're collecting on your media side, your, membership side, whatever that is, like just re-looking at those and redefining that. And I really think that like redefining success doesn't have to mean bigger and better. It can literally just be smarter. That's it. So I think like we just need to like redefine that a little bit and understand everything. So in the end, we just want long-term sustainable momentum and more empowered team along the way. So that is all I have. I think we'll probably open it up to questions now.
You bet, April. Thanks for sharing the FMA story. It is time for Q&A. So if you haven't already, feel free to submit your questions using the Ask a Question box. We'll get to as many as we can. As we are waiting for those questions to roll in, I've got one to kick things off, April. So tell us, was it challenging to get buy-in across your organization for this approach? How did you build that support, and who's been involved along the way to make it happen?
I don't know if I would say, I don't know if it was really like challenging per se. But it was just, I think it was more of like we're going to change something because we've been doing something the same way. Right. So I wouldn't say challenging. It was like, oh, this is a shock where we want to actually change something the way we've been doing it. So I think how originally some of this stuff started, like I might've went to the publisher, and said, hey, I'm thinking about this. And it was, okay, roll with it. Do some mock-ups, right? This is where we're doing the audit of, okay, we don't want to freak anybody out because we know change is hard, right? We all know that change is very, very hard. So we made the mock-ups and then we presented those mock-ups of how the data was this old way and how it was going to look this new way. So that really went to, a lot of the executive team, the salespeople were involved, right? Especially when we're talking about the adjusting of NAICS codes. The sales was very much involved in that because we had to say like, hey, are advertisers coming to you and saying, I want to advertise to NAICS codes 42315, like, are they really asking that question? Are people asking for our audit statement? So we really involve those people. And if they're like, no, or like, oh, I might have one person, I might have a handful, like, well, then that's more on us of like re-educating our advertisers of like the importance and like the overview of the audience and who we have. It's not just based on a specific demographic question. Okay. So again, not challenging, but it's just more of like getting that like awareness out there of like, we could do this a little differently.
Gotcha. Got a few more rolling in here. We'll just kind of jump into the next one here. Question comes in, have you considered using AI to help with industry codes to NAICS codes standardization, to industry codes to NAICS code standardization?
Yes, I've actually started recently exploring this a little bit, and even kind of having AI. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2, right? I started looking into that and even trying to have AI write a code for me in Excel. Actually, last week that I got really excited about, and it's working so far, but I need to do some more testing on it. So yes, I have thought about it. It is in the works. Stay tuned on how that pans out.
All right, we got somebody who wants to understand how you tracked all your moving parts. The question is, how did you track all the moving parts around your change? And did you actually use a platform for project management?
No, we did not use a platform for project management. Probably should have, because there's definitely things that slip through. They're like, oh, hey, we forgot about this. Honestly, we just tracked it ourselves. Shamefully, not shamefully, through Excel. We had a tracker of this is what we're doing, the date that we're started, the date that we're ended. So we just did that all on ourselves. And we had not only with that data tracker for ourselves, but we still have weekly meetings, right? So we have at least once a week meetings with different departments, teams within the organization of changes that were made, how we're changing things. And I think that'll be a continuation for a long time. whether we're talking about changes that we've made or just, updates and just making sure that we're all aware of what we're doing, our end goal.
Gotcha. Thanks for that. I know we're at the bottom of the hour. You have time for 2 more. See if we can squeeze a couple more in, and then we'll call it
Yeah.
a day. Let's see. Second to last one. Somebody wants to know, were there any early wins along the way that helped build momentum or get the team on board?
Um, I think the early wins were once we kind of were like, okay, let's do like an audit of like how things would look differently if we changed a few things, and seeing the time savings that created. I think that immediately was the big win right away, right? Like I kind of mentioned it, nobody wants to work harder, right? We all want more time back in our day. So I think that was the big win early on of, okay, we're going to save X amount of time doing this, like check, done. That's it.
All right, last one. Somebody wants to know what's next for FMA and OMIDA. Are there any upcoming goals for audience development? And do you see OMIDA playing a role in that?
Possibly. I mean, I think what's next for us is, like I said, going into those audience behaviors a little bit more, and seeing kind of where we can segment, right? At least in our industry, manufacturing, it's a lot of, we might have some older generations and some younger generations just coming in, and like, how do we pivot? How do we speak to them a little bit differently? Do I think OMIDA plays a part? I think there's definitely always things that OMIDA can probably play a part in. We are doing some behavioral data loads within OMIDA to kind of overlap with our current audience. And that aspects, we're trying a couple beta programs with OMIDA. We're testing out a couple different email things with them. So I think there's, endless possibilities. But yeah, we'll see what comes down the pipeline.
You bet. Great job today. Hey, thanks so much for sharing your insights and your expertise today. And I also want to say thanks to everyone who joined us for the conversation. A quick reminder before we wrap, today's session was recorded. We'll be sending out the replay link to everyone who registered. We definitely hope you found the discussion valuable. We hope you're leaving with some ideas you can bring back to your team. If you'd like to learn more about FMA and their brands or about OMIDA, feel free to check out the resources on your screen, or you can visit fmamfg.org and omida.com. Thanks again for spending time with us today. We look forward to seeing you at a future